Unbelievable and spine-chilling, two terrifying true 4th of July horror stories revealed. Emily stood on her front porch, the flickering fireworks illuminating the somber shadow of her suburban home. July 4th was meant for celebration, but as the scent of barbecue wafted through the air, it filled her heart with despair. Bills piled high on the kitchen table and 2 kids waiting for joy filled her with dread. Her 10-year-old, Lily, was bouncing around with excitement, while her 6-year-old, Max, clung to her side, vulnerable in the summer heat. But something felt wrong. Across the street, a new family had just moved in. Their house was quiet, absent of laughter and delight. The shadows danced eerily among the darkened windows, and Emily felt a shiver slide down her spine. Just as the first crack of fireworks exploded overhead, she caught a glimpse of a silhouette darting in the corner of her eye. Was it just her imagination? Or was there something lurking in the dark? Pushing the unsettling thoughts aside, she plastered on a fake smile for her children. They needed a sense of normalcy, even if it felt like a fragile facade. Emily decorated the porch with red, white, and blue, trying to drown out the stench of impending troubles. Yet, deep inside, a whisper of fear nagged at her, a feeling she couldn't shake. When Max wandered off momentarily, her heart caught in her throat. Minutes felt like hours, and panic gripped her when he returned, disoriented. "Mommy." There was a man. He stammered, his tiny hands trembling. A man with a dark smile. Her insides twisted, a cold dread pooling in her stomach. What had he seen? Had something truly sinister escaped from the shadows? Desperate, she rushed to the local police station, eager for reassurance. But the officer's laugh sent a jolt of anger through her. "Just kids playing games," he dismissed, brushing her aside like she was nothing but an overzealous mother. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The weight of vulnerability pressed heavier on her as she drove back home. How could she count on anyone but herself to protect her family? With a newfound determination, Emily marched next door to confront the neighbors. They had smiled genuinely, yet something about their eyes, vacant and cold, set her heart racing. As they shared tales of community ties and festivities, shadows flickered behind them, feeding her unease. Then it happened. A chilling breeze twisted through the air, whispers enveloping her. "Evil sleeps in forgotten houses," someone had muttered once. She recoiled. The man with the dark smile, lurking just beyond her gaze. No longer just a figment of her child's imagination. This was real. Gripping Max's hand tightly, she prepared to confront the dread around her. The night deepened, a swirling mist cloaking her fears and igniting every parental instinct. Emily stared into the darkness, heart racing, breaths shallow. Just as she steadied herself, she saw him, a figure slipping between shadows, a twisted grin carving into his pale face. What did he want? With the weight of her children in her arms, she knew one truth more than any other. This holiday held horrors she was only beginning to uncover. Emily's heart pounded as the figure melted into the darkness, blending seamlessly with the shadows of the lurid night. The air felt electric, buzzing with apprehension and dread. Max clutched her leg, his tiny fingers digging into her skin. "Mommy, please let us go inside," he whimpered, his voice barely a whisper, but she couldn't move. An instinct, primal and fierce, rooted her to the spot. The flickering fireworks above echoed the turmoil within her, a cacophony of light cascading against the uncertainty that loomed heavy and oppressive. She was his mother. She was all they had. "Stay close to me," she murmured to her children, forcing her feet to carry her back toward the house. But as they stepped onto the porch, the uninvited chill enveloped them once more. The world was in celebration, but this mini-paradise felt like the epicenter of a nightmare yet to unfold. As Emily locked the door behind her, she glanced back at the eerie house across the street. The windows seemed even darker now, pools of murkiness reflecting no light but the hint of a flicker, shadows stirring beyond the glass. Had she imagined it, or had she seen movement, a figure watching her from behind the drawn curtains? Fireworks! Lily squealed, her excitement sugarcoating the tension. Emily wanted nothing more than to join her daughter in savoring the moment, to push this fear away, but it clung to her like a vice. She turned to fetch snacks, her heart still racing, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, the lights in the neighbor's house blinked on, illuminating the silhouettes that loomed in the windows. Emily gasped, freezing in her tracks. There they were, the neighbors, their faces pale, eyes wide, staring directly at her, unblinking. The twisted grin of the man Max's dark smile flashed before her mind's eye. The same smile one might wear when greeting an old friend, but she was not friends with them. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Max looked up, his innocence brushing against her mounting dread. "Nothing, sweetheart," she lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Emily felt sweat pooling at her temples. Just then, an ear-splitting crack resonated through the air from the fireworks, or maybe it was something else. The next moment, the sound echoed again, this time much closer. A deep thrum vibrated through the floorboards, the walls shaking with a resonance she had never felt before. "Mommy!" Lily shouted, more bewildered than scared, her excitement turning to worry. "What was that?" "Let us go into the living room," Emily insisted, trying to compartmentalize her fear. They hurried to the back of the house, away from the sights and sounds that were spiraling out of control, but as she settled them on the couch, her heart sank. The television flickered on, static buzzing ominously as a grotesque image filled the screen, a man with a dark smile, eyes glowing with malice. Emily felt her stomach drop. Was it a trick? A coincidence? Or something worse? Was her mind playing tricks, or were the neighbors taunting her through the airwaves now? Before she could reach for the remote, the screen glitched. The smile remained, twisted and unnatural, and the static deepened, morphing into whispered words. "Don't leave your home," it cooed, drowning her in fear. Suddenly, the power surged and plunged them into darkness. A loud crash resonated from outside, causing Emily to bolt upright. There was movement. They were coming. There was no doubt now, with Max whimpering beside her and Lily clutching her tightly, she felt the walls begin to close in. She held her breath as the doorknob rattled. Should she hide? Should she run? Her instincts screamed for her to act, but everything felt paralyzed by the weight of the dark smile that loomed closer. Just then, she heard a chilling voice break through the veil of darkness. "We've come to celebrate," and just as the lights flickered back on, a new chill cut through the warmth of the summer night, sending shivers down her spine. What horrendous celebration awaited them? Emily steeled herself, her breath hitching. She had to protect her kids. But the question lingered in her mind, what had the neighbors brought to her doorstep? The rattling doorknob twisted again, insistent, a metallic clink echoing through the room. Emily felt the hairs on her arms stand on end. She glanced at her children, their eyes wide in terror, cheeks flushed under the dim glow of the emergency lights. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice trembling like the floor beneath them. Max squeezed Lily's hand tightly, the fear radiating from him palpable. They scrambled further into the couch, as if its fabric could shield them from whatever horror waited just outside the door. Emily's mind raced, trying to concoct a plan. She wished she had a weapon, anything to defend her family if it came to that. The rattling stopped silence. It was almost worse than the noise, pregnant with potential danger. Then, a voice high and sweet, a cruel mimicry of innocence, broke the ominous stillness. "Emily, let us in. We brought treats." Her blood ran cold. The tone was wrong, too cheerful, too mocking. From the other side of the door, the neighbors' laughter thrummed, unsettling and distorted. They didn't sound like people anymore, they sounded like monsters in disguise. "Mommy!" Lily cried, her tiny voice small and desperate. "What do we do?" Emily pressed a finger to her lips, urging silence. A sudden urgency clawed at her as she weighed her choices. Should she call 911? But what could she even say? Instead, she glanced around the room. The kitchen knives could be sharp, but would it matter if there were multiple intruders? As if reading her thoughts, the voice continued, "We just want to celebrate the 4th of July together, Emily. It's a family holiday. It'll be fun." A sickening grin spread on her face at the thought of them coming in. She noticed the kitchen window still unlocked. It might be a chance to escape. But the road was likely swarming with their twisted counterparts. Suddenly, the TV crackled back to life, the grotesque image of the man flashing again. "Don't run away. We only want to play." The eyes on screen seemed to smirk menacingly, mocking her plight. They felt alive, pointing fingers at her, eyes glowing brighter with each passing second. The lights flickered again, illuminating the faces of the neighbors peeking through the windows, their expressions almost cultish, eyes wide with an intense, unnatural excitement. Emily could barely breathe. The sight of them lurking outside, their outlines creeping in and out of the shadows, filled her with adrenaline. It was all too surreal, a dream spun in nightmarish hues. With shaking hands, she reached for the remote, hoping to find some control in this chaotic moment. A thick sweat dripped from her brow as she pressed the off button over and over, but the screen wouldn't submit. The image shifted and distorted as it reached fever pitch. "Let us in!" They shouted in unison, voices blending into a chaotic symphony that echoed in the house, crashing against her ears like waves of dread. "Mommy!" Max cried out, finally breaking free from his sister's hold and scrambling over the couch to her side. "I want to go home." Emily's heart shattered at the sound of his voice. Home. This was supposed to be home. It felt like a trap now, suffocating and filled with demonic thrill. She glanced again at the front door where shadows danced restlessly. They were waiting. "Lily, you and Max, go to the bathroom. Lock the door, and don't come out for anything. Promise me." "But Mommy, what about you?" Lily's voice quaked, fear piercing through the room like a dagger. "I'll be right behind you. Go." With a final glance at her mother, Lily took Max's hand, leading him toward the hallway, their footsteps muffled by the terrified whispers of the house. Emily breathed deeply, steeling herself. This was the moment. They couldn't break in, she would not let them. Just then, the doorknob turned again, slower now, deliberately. They were testing her resolve. And then Emily understood. She was no longer just a mother, she was their final line of defense. But how could she protect them from what they couldn't see? "Go away!" she screamed, her voice cracking under the weight of terror. "Leave us alone!" In that moment of primal desperation, the laughter erupted anew, ringing through the house like the haunting sound of fireworks echoing in the distance, and as the door inched open with a creak that seemed to scream for the darkness outside, she noticed a glimmer near the threshold, a piece of red fabric fluttering. Not just fabric. A bloody reminder. "Emily," they whispered in unison, grinning wider. "Let the celebration begin." A sudden crash from behind, a heavy thud resonating, wondering if it was help or a final trick, set the fear in motion once more. What came through remained hidden, veiled in shadows, but she could feel it drawing closer. What horrors awaited her inside, and could she protect her family from the celebration unfolding at their door? The door creaked open, an ominous split that revealed nothing but darkness. A chill swept through the room, coiling around Emily's throat, squeezing her breath. The laughter outside surged, rising to a fever pitch as if they could sense her fear, feeding on it like vultures. Emily, it was more than just a voice, it was a chorus, layered and echoing, overlapping in a ghastly blend. "Let us in, it'll be such fun." Her heart raced. Would they stop at nothing? Every instinct in her screamed to flee, but her feet felt glued to the floor. Desperation clawed at her, forcing her to take action. She had to think clearly, but panic muddled her thoughts. Then, a crash. It was louder than before, a bludgeoning force against the heavy silence that followed the laughter. Had she imagined it? Was it just the house settling? She could feel the pulse of fear in her throat, a tightening that made it difficult to swallow. Whatever was out there, it was drawing closer, and she didn't want to wait to find out what it was. Gathering herself, she took a cautious step toward the hallway, a path leading towards the bathroom where her children hid. Just as she was about to move, lights flickered, plunging the room into sudden darkness, then illuminating it again in a stutters of yellowish glow. Shadows danced on the walls, grotesque versions of the familiar, twisting into shapes that pushed against her reality. She forced herself to remember the face of each child, their trust nestled in her responsibility. "Stay strong," she whispered to herself, gasping as an icy wind surged into the room through the door now ajar. What if they were inside already? Emily, the voice wove through the air, wrapping around her. "We're here to play. It's more fun in the dark." A shudder racked her body. She couldn't allow herself to succumb to their manipulations. These weren't her neighbors, they were not even human anymore. They had crossed some unseen line that turned them into something far grimmer. Her stomach twisted at the thought. With renewed determination, she again glanced towards the window. It felt like a lifeline, an escape route, but it was high risk. Could she really send the kids out that way? If those things were waiting outside? Another crash came from the living room, followed by a vindictive laughter that sent a shiver racing down her spine. They were getting inside, inching closer to the heart of her sanctuary. Emily then snatched a kitchen knife from the counter and steadied her breath. She willed her heart to slow. "I can't show fear," she muttered, gripping the knife as she eyed the hallway. "I will protect them." Before she could move, a figure surged into the room, a mass of shadows stepping through the door. It loomed taller than she anticipated, draped in tattered clothing that looked eerily familiar. The fabric was that same shade of red she'd seen at the threshold. "Hello," Emily, the voice was a warped echo of the cheerful tone she'd heard outside. It crawled through her skin like spiders, chilling her blood. "We just wanted to have a little party together." The figure tilted its head to the side, and for a moment, a flash of a friendly face grinned back at her, then morphed into something ghastly as it laughed. "Don't you want to join us?" She knew she couldn't let them take her. Max and Lily needed her now, needed their mother to be brave. With shaking hands, she aimed the knife toward the looming figure, her voice steady as she spoke. "You will not touch them. Force the door," it whispered, melding with the darkness. "Join the festival." And as if on cue, the other shapes pressed in from behind the figure, faces leering, melting in and out of the light. They all chanted, a cacophony of voices rising in a twisted harmony. Suddenly, the lights flickered again and everything went dark. The oppressive silence that followed was stifling, thick as fog, and for a moment, she thought she could hear the distant sound of drumming, percussive and primal, as if the world outside had awakened, ready to unleash its secret. What had she unleashed? Would the darkness swallow them all whole? The whispers began again, softer now, but still insistent. "Come out, come and play." Would Emily be able to keep her children safe from the terror gathering in the shadows, or would this become part of the horror story they'd all unwittingly joined? The darkness was suffocating. Emily's heart hammered in her chest, each beat striking like a drum echoing in a hollow abyss. The silence was alive, crawling over her skin. Instinctively, she squeezed the knife tighter, her fingers trembling, the steel cold against her palm. She was not about to let them take her children. Just then, the laughter erupted again, sharper this time. A chilling cackle rang out, unmistakably closer, forcing her to bite back a scream. They were searching for her, seeking her out like wolves honing in on prey. She had to move. "Max! Lily!" Her voice emerged as a hoarse whisper in the blackness. Would they hear her? Or were they enveloped in their own horrified silence, she tiptoed toward the hallway, each step hesitant yet filled with a primal urgency. A dim light flickered from the bathroom, a small beacon in the murk. Her heart skipped. They were still safe. She had to reach them. But as she approached, the oppressive cold intensified. Shadows flickered at the corners of her vision, twisting and lunging a dance of blurred hands and malevolent grins. They were everywhere. Panic surged through her, making her heartbeat pound in her ears. "Let them go!" she shouted, voice rising, shaky and desperate. The laughter turned sinister, banding together in a discordant chorus that wrapped around her. "You can't hold on to them forever, Emily," their voices slithered beneath her skin. "Let them go to the festival." The words darted through her like knives. All at once, the lights above flickered violently, plunging her into moments of blinding brilliance followed by oppressive darkness. Shadows elongated, reaching for her, and she stumbled backward. "Please, no." She gritted her teeth, the knife held at the ready. Just then, there was a loud crash, something heavy hitting the ground with a sickening thud. Her breath hitched. It felt like the thief of hope had stolen the light from the world, leaving only despair in its wake. A shriek came from the living room, a piercing cry that could only belong to her children. Emily's blood ran cold. Without thinking, she raced to the sound, her heart seething with dread. "Mommy!" Their voices were muffled, tangled in a whirlwind of noise from outside. She tore through the door, the daylight spilling into the darkness, illuminating twisted faces pressed against the windows, eyes glinting with excitement and hunger. "No!" The shapes danced, their bodies merging and separating, like smoke. Emily reached for the window, heart racing, but the glass shook violently, rattled by unseen forces beyond. She turned back toward the bathroom. "Hold on. I'm coming!" she cried again, bolting toward the last sanctuary. As she pushed open the door, she found Max and Lily huddled close together, eyes wide, cheeks wet with tears. Relief washed over her momentarily. "Mommy! They're coming!" Max's voice was trembling, and she could hardly mask her horror as she threw her arms around them. "I know, I'm here. I won't let them take you." Her voice was a desperate promise, but a chill crept back, whispering doubts into her mind. Suddenly, the laughter outside intensified, merging into a single dreadful roar that seemed to encompass all reality. Then, something heavy thumped against the door, sending tremors through the air. "Mommy, what's that?" Lily whimpered, eyes darting toward the door. With all her strength, Emily braced against it, willing the barrier to withstand the encroaching tide of terror. But there was another tapping, sharper now, coming from the windows. Emily, the distorted voice from before, slipped through the cracks, warping the air around her. "Let us in." The darkness is inviting as a cold gust ripped through the room, the door rattled again, this time easing ajar. Everything seemed to hang in the balance. Emily glanced at her kids, courage warring with dread. Would she be able to keep this fragile shield intact, or would they be drawn into the abyss? "What are you willing to sacrifice to save them?" The voice taunted, drawing closer. In the midst of terror, hope seemed to flicker. Would there be a way to fight? Or would this night drag them into a nightmare they could never escape? The shadows lurked ever closer, echoing her own fears, and for every ounce of bravery she mustered, it felt like the darkness countered, luring them deeper into its relentless grip. And somewhere in that chaos, a chilling realization dawned. Perhaps the true horror lurked not just outside, but inside her very heart. What was she truly willing to face to protect her children? The door creaked as it pulled away from her grip, revealing a sliver of inky darkness. Footsteps echoed outside, shuffling, dragging, as if something heavy were being slowly dragged across the threshold. Emily's heart raced. She pressed her back against the door, beads of sweat trickling down her spine. She looked down at Max and Lily, their wide eyes reflecting her own panic. "Stay quiet." Her voice was strained but firm. "Do not move." But the shadows outside didn't heed her desperate warnings. They were a relentless tide, flowing hungrily toward her. The laughter crescendoed, a cacophony that resonated deep within her bones, yanking at her sanity. Then, as if in direct response to Emily's strained breath, the door swung open fully, crashing into the wall. A gust of cold air swept through, wrapping around her like icy fingers. In the threshold stood a figure, no more than a child, cloaked in darkness with matted hair and sunken eyes that gleamed unnaturally. "Come play with us," the entity rasped, voice like gravel sliding down an endless ravine. "Stay back!" Emily shouted, her hold tightening on the knife. Her feet trembled, wanting to abandon their post, but maternal instinct cemented her to the spot. The laughter intensified, filling every corner of the room, pouring like foul rain. "They need to come. It's time for the festival." The words echoed, pressing in on her sanity like a vice. "No. I want to let you take them." She cried defiantly, but already the shadows shifted. They twisted and churned like a storm. Emily could feel her resolve unraveling. A sudden crash from the kitchen caused her heart to stutter. With every instinct screaming, she glanced over her shoulder, confirming that the exit to safety was closed. A barricade of malevolence stood ready to engulf her family. "Mommy, please," Max whispered, tugging at her leg. His eyes darted back toward the window where pale fingers reached in, striving to grasp what was inside. Emily felt her breath quicken. "We need to move now." Without thinking, she grabbed the knife with both hands, carving a path through the chaos, desperate and trembling. She tried to bolt for the back door, and the kids followed closely behind, feet whispering against the cold floor. Yet as they neared, a shadow surged, slamming the door shut with a thunderous thud. "No! No, no!" Emily pounded against it, chest tightening. "Mommy!" Lily screeched, her little voice rising over the din. "They're all around us." Her heart sank as she turned to see a wave of figures surging through the house, twisted, grinning faces emerging from every crevice. They were closing in, their laughter twisting into a sinister hymn. "Let them go!" Emily shouted, a thin shred of defiance still flickering in the dim light. The lead figure tilted its head, its mouth stretching into a grin that shouldn't have been possible. "You don't understand, Emily. Tonight, there are no sacrifices without gain. We want something of yours, something precious." A chill wrapped around her. The grip on her knife faltered slightly as dread clenched her heart. What could they possibly want? Max clutched her hand tighter, his small fingers trembling. "Mommy, don't let them take us." The shadows pulsed with malicious energy, and in that moment, she felt the insatiable greed coming from them. It was as if they wanted not just her children, but her very soul. "Please," she pleaded, desperate. "We can, Mommy." Lily shrieked again, cut off by a sudden yell as the figures lunged toward them. Emily turned, adrenaline surging as she pulled her children close, but as the scuffle broke loose, she realized she had only moments left. They were surrounded, the darkness closing in. Fingers clawed at her edges, but as she clenched the knife, she caught a brief glimpse of the open door behind the figures, the only escape. "Hold on tight," she shouted, her heart pounding harder than ever as she prepared to lunge forward, but even as she gathered her strength for the leap, a thought pierced through her fear. Was it too late? Was she willing to fight, or would they finally claim her and her children as their own? The laughter reached a fever pitch. What awaited them on the other side of that door? Would they find freedom or fall into an even deeper nightmare? Emily felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins as she readied herself for the leap. She was no longer just a mother, she was a lioness protecting her cubs, a fire igniting deep within her. But the shadows swirled with otherworldly glee, whispering promises of despair, their voices a dissonant symphony echoing in her mind. "Mommy!" Max whispered a second time, clutching her leg as if his grip could anchor them in reality. With a growl that surprised even herself, Emily bellowed, "Now!" and dashed toward the door, dragging her children along. The shadows recoiled slightly, as though taken aback by her sudden courage. It was a moment of hope that ended far too quickly. Just as they reached the threshold, a blanket of darkness erupted from the walls, coiling around her arms, dragging at her limbs like tendrils of rotten vines. Emily fought against it, each second stretching into an eternity as the air thickened around them, the malevolent hilarity reaching a fever pitch. Lily screamed, her voice piercing through the chaos. Emily's heart splintered, a mix of terror and fury erupting within her. "Let go of us!" she yelled, swinging the knife into the void. But her strike met nothing but cold, empty air. Suddenly, the shadows took form. They were changing, morphing into grotesque replicas of Emily, Max, and Lily, twisted and smiling sinister smiles. Dread coiled around her heart like a snake. Was this how they would perish? "Mommy!" The kids shrieked in unison, their eyes wide with terror as they saw their own faces grinning back at them from the darkness. "No! No! This isn't real!" Emily screamed, her voice barely above a whisper now. She wanted to believe it, yet the figures before her laughed, the sound ringing hollow and echoing through the very fabric of her being. The figures inched closer, their fingers stretching out, yearning to touch. The lead figure, a mockery of her own likeness, grinned maliciously. "It doesn't matter what you believe, Emily. We are part of you. We always have been." Panic blossomed in her chest. The very essence of her family, twisted into a nightmare, threatened to tear them apart piece by piece. She stumbled backward, pulling Max and Lily close, desperate to block out the images. "Close your eyes. Don't look at them," she yelled, tears streaming down her cheeks. But her heart sank. She knew the shadows fed on fear. They thrived in the darkness that threatened to consume her soul. The door behind them shuddered, and Emily glanced back, hoping for escape. A glimmer of silver shone the knife. She had dropped it in her struggle against the shadows. With a sudden burst of determination, she broke free from Max and Lily's hold momentarily, and lunged back. The world narrowed to a single point, the knife just within reach, when she felt a sudden grip on her ankle, pulling her down. A burst of laughter surrounded her, choking her breaths as Emily fought to regain control. "Join us. Become one with your fears," they chanted, the voices merging into a chant of madness, spiraling around her like a cyclone. Emily's mind raced. She could feel the cold air stealing her strength, sapping her will. Yet, as she turned to face the twisted doubles of her family, a desperate thought ignited within her. "No!" she shouted, snatching the knife and plunging it into the floor. "You will not take my belief." In a blinding flash, the shadows screeched, recoiling as the knife sank deeper into the wood. Emily looked back at her children, terror still etched on their faces. The laughter faded, replaced by a sickly silence. But was it over? Had she truly banished the shadows, or merely delayed the inevitable? They stood in a liminal space of silence, the darkness thrumming with anticipation. What new horrors awaited? Would the dagger seal their fate, or would it unleash something worse? As dread filled the spaces between them, a whisper echoed in the darkness. It isn't over yet. What would they unleash, and could Emily protect her children from what was yet to come? A chill crept through the air, settling into the marrow of Emily's bones. In that silence, a shift occurred, a heaviness pressing against her chest. The shadows did not retreat, they lingered, swirling, mutating into something more sinister, feeding off the growing dread that enveloped her. "Mommy, I'm scared," Max's tiny voice cracked, pulling her back from the edge of despair. Emily glanced at her children. Their faces, once bright with innocence, were now shadows of fear she couldn't bear to see. "Hold on to me," she whispered fiercely. They clasped her tightly, forming a fragile chain of warmth amidst the cold fear that wrapped around them. The silence shattered as the shadows morphed again, transforming into dark configurations of distorted faces and grinning mouths, all mocking her with silent laughter. Emily squeezed her eyes shut for an instant, desperate to block it out. But within the darkness, something flickered. A glimmer caught her eye, a tiny shimmer amid the black, like a tooth gleaming in the night. Over there. She barely had the strength to point, but the children followed her gaze. The knife, now embedded in the floor, pulsed as if alive, its silver blade gleaming with fierce promise. "Mommy!" Lily cried, terror spilling from her voice. "Don't look at them!" Emily shouted, focusing on the knife. "We have to get it." She didn't know if it would grant them salvation, but they had to try. As they moved toward the knife, the shadows screamed, a cacophony of anguish and rage that pierced through the night. The air vibrated as the darkness writhed, clawing at their backs, reaching for their feet, the whispers ramping into an unnatural frenzy. Fingers of coldness brushed Emily's skin, and she felt their emptiness, their hunger for despair. "Faster!" she urged, dragging her children forward as she stumbled. The shadows surged behind them with a feral howl, feeling the pulse of her fear balling into something stronger: anger, desperation. Just as they were within reach, Emily tripped over an unseen root of darkness snaking across the floor. She fell hard, her palms cracking against the cold, rough wood. A gasp escaped her lips, but she didn't have time to dwell on the pain. "Grab the knife. Now!" she shouted, the desperate urgency thick in her voice. In a moment of sheer instinct, Max lunged for the dagger, small hands tipping the blade from the wooden floor with a crackle of energy. The moment it left its prison, the chaos-intensified howls echoed like banshees as light erupted around them. "Mommy, it's burning!" Lily screamed as the knife sent out a golden glow that seared through the black mist, illuminating the grotesque faces stretching their mouths in anguish. "Use it! Use it to fight!" Emily cried, rising to her feet, seizing Max's shoulder. The shadows recoiled, writhing as they were scorched by the ethereal light. But just as hope flickered in the air, shadows that had once been her children's replicas began to merge with the darkness, stretching into monstrous forms, towering over them. They twisted, becoming larger, more fearsome, their faces stretching into an impenetrable wall of terror. The laughter returned, surrounding them, louder and more intoxicating. "What now, dear Emily? Will you let fear consume you?" With her heart pounding a furious beat in her chest, Emily felt a rising tide of rage fueled by love. The knife pulsed in her hands, urging her forward. Would it banish the darkness or lure them deeper? "No!" she shouted, wielding the blade as her own fear and fury coalesced. "You will not have my children." But as she stepped closer, beacons of light flickering off the knife, the shadows surged, creating walls that pressed against her. Were they stronger than her will, stronger than the love she felt? The fabric of reality began to peel away, and a voice reverberated from every corner. "This is just the beginning. What would emerge from the depths, and how much more would Emily have to sacrifice to protect her family?" The shadows grew tighter, pulsating with a hunger that gnawed at the edges of Emily's sanity. The faces became grotesque masks of fear, gnashing teeth and eyes wide with a terror that mirrored her own. She felt their presence like a heavy fog, thick and suffocating, pressing against her body, stealing her breath. "Max! Lily! Stay close!" she commanded, hoping to project strength she didn't feel. The knife burned in her grip, a blazing reminder of what was at stake. But the shadows didn't relent, they lurked, clawing for her, seeking the cracks in her resolve. "Will you fight for them?" The dark voices sneered, circling like vultures, shrill and mocking. "Or will you join us instead?" "Shut up!" Emily screamed, her voice hoarse as it cut through the cries around her. She could see the dark forms inching closer, ready to envelop her children. Breathless with fear and fury, she swung the knife, the golden light slicing through the fog, momentarily revealing a path ahead. "Now! Run!" she shouted, shoving Max and Lily forward. The knife's glow danced around them, illuminating their terrified faces. They moved as if pulled by an unseen thread, hearts racing with each hurried step, but the darkness wasn't finished. It lashed out, angry and vengeful. Armored in shadows, monstrous limbs clawed at their ankles, dragging at their resolve. Emily felt the cold fingers of despair grasping at her heart, numbing her resolve. "Mom!" Max yelled, his small voice driven by sheer panic. She couldn't fail him, not now. With everything she had, Emily summoned a surge of determination, the blade flashing defiantly in the dark. "Stay behind me!" she cried, feeling the weight of their fraying hope. Each swing of the knife sent shockwaves rippling through the air, piercing tendrils of void that encroached on her children. But as she fought, it felt like an eternal battle. The shadows only morphed more, becoming denser, angrier, twisting into impossible forms writhing beneath an unseen force that in a trembling moment of clarity, she realized that the shadows were toys of emotion, only alive because of the fear they fed on. "You're nothing. You are afraid of us," Emily shouted, recalling the love that fueled her, the bond within her family a shield against the void. As she advanced, she positioned the knife as a spear, channeling every ounce of love for Max and Lily into its gleaming silver blade. Energy rippled up her arm, igniting her spirit. "You want fear? Then face my light." With a fierce yell, she thrust the knife forward, the incandescent glow erupting like a supernova against the shadowy onslaught. Light flooded the oppressive darkness, piercing through despair like a beacon. The monstrous forms recoiled, screeching and writhing with rage as light engulfed them, but as they fractured and fell away, something shifted within the light, an unsettling presence, thrumming with a darker intent. Emily's heart sank as she caught a glimpse of something hovering just beyond the veil, something both familiar and terrifying. "Emily," a voice whispered, sweet and haunting, wrapping itself around her like a vine. "Who's there?" she shouted, dread seeping in again like ice. Lily and Max pressed against her, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Mommy!" they cried, their voices echoing in the void. "I will protect you," Emily answered, her grip tightening on the knife, yet, the shadows pulsated, twisting in agony but morphing into something different. Something waiting. Had they transformed from darkness to something worse? As the remnants of light began to flicker like a dying flame, Emily's heart raced with dread. The attack wasn't over. And the voice continued, laced with a dreadful familiarity. "The game is not yet finished. You will know despair soon enough." What haunting truth lingered just behind her memories? What came next would change everything forever. The blinding light flickered, each pulse sending faint echoes of warmth coursing through Emily's veins as she gripped the knife, steel hard against her palm. Shadows twisted around her, shrinking away, but Emily knew a chill ran down her spine. They were not finished. "Mommy?" Max's small voice broke through her focus, grasping her hand tighter, his tiny fingers trembling against her palm. "Stay close, and don't look away," she instructed, her voice firm but quavering with the weight of dread. The air chilled again, causing her breath to mist before her. It was as if the shadows were taking a breath of their own, preparing for an assault she could not anticipate. She could feel it, a pulse in the darkness, gathering strength with every breath they took. Eyes wide with terror, the faces of Max and Lily reflected the fear that threatened to drown them. And yet, something in Emily was igniting again. A primal resolve rushed through her. She wouldn't let this horror claim her family. "Let us move," she shouted suddenly, urging the children forward. Despite the looming nightmares, she felt electricity blazing from the knife, urging her ever closer to the door. But an icy breeze struck from every angle, like unseen hands tugging at her limbs, trying to pull her back. "Not today," she exhaled. The light flared, and in that moment, she realized the shadows shrank back from its glow. They fled down the hallway as more laughter curled around them, a sound thick with malice. "Come play with us. We will always be here, Emily." One shadow called from the following darkness, voice like blackened honey. "Keep your eyes forward. She barked, her heart thundered in her chest. Together, they made it to the front door, which loomed ahead like a portal to freedom. But it was shut tight, a heavy barrier sealing them away from salvation. No, no. Panic laced her voice as she tugged at the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. The laughter crested like a wave behind her, disgusting and triumphant. Mommy! They're coming! Then in an instant, everything went still. A suffocating silence enfolded them, and her breath hitched as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Emily hardened her grip around the knife, heart thumping in a desperate rhythm. If she could hit them with the light one last time. She couldn't bear the thought of losing her children to this living nightmare. Listen, whatever comes, we have to face it together, she whispered urgently, kneeling to their level. I will not let them take you. You are my light. How do we get out? Lily cried, her small voice filled with terror. Trust me. Whatever happens, we fight together. Suddenly, the door rattled with violent force, and she glanced back, ready for the onslaught. Damn you! She shouted, shoving the knife into the ground with fury. Laughter ensued but faltered, revealing something vulnerable beneath. Something like fear. Focused now, she turned back towards her children, their innocent faces glistening with the glow of love. She felt it shift inside her, the warmth, the unwavering bond of family. In that heartbeat, she made a choice. Lily, Max, hold hands with me. They did, tiny fingers intertwining with hers, and together, their hearts binding as one. Now on 3, Emily said, a fire igniting in her chest. 1, 2, 3. They pushed against the door, each ounce of willpower flooding through their arms. To her amazement, the knob clicked, twisting and suddenly shedding light through the seam's golden beams, breaking the invasive darkness. Let us go. Emily urged, pulling her children through the doorway as the shadows recoiled in protest. Only the warmth of the summer night awaited them. Fireworks painted the sky in vibrant bursts of color. Freedom. Everything returned to normal. The festival continued outside, families gathering, laughter echoing. Shivering, Emily pulled her kids closer. They stumbled out onto the street, taking in the chaos of celebration. Everything felt alive again, the summer air filled with relief intermingled with cries of joy. Tears of gratitude streamed down her cheeks, but then her gut twisted. In the distance, shadows danced in the alleyway where they had just come from, flickering blue and green in the glow of fireworks, waiting, watching. Mom? Max whispered, looking back with wide, innocent eyes filled with questions. Mommy? Echoed Lily, nestled securely against Emily's hip, taking a shaky breath. She crouched down, looking them both in the eye. They're not gone, and they weren't who we thought, she said gently. But I promise they can't touch what's inside. Those will always be ours to protect. With arms wrapped tightly around her children, Emily watched the fireworks fill the night sky. Each pop and crackle felt like a tribute to the fight they had been through. They were stronger now, tethered tightly, resilient against the darkness. And as long as they stood together, they would shine brighter than anything that dared to come, a living beacon battling shadows. The power of their love could shatter anything that dared to claim them, and Emily knew then, as the night wore on, the true fireworks would always be born from within. Together always, Emily murmured as they moved toward the festive lights, onward into the glowing throng. And though darkness loomed, her heart brimmed with joy, knowing they would never face it alone. The end. You need to subscribe now to catch more spine-chilling tales like this one. Smash that like button now, it fuels our fire and keeps these stories coming. Flood the comments with your reactions and thoughts. We want to hear from you about this wild conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to be part of this journey. True fans know the importance of supporting our channel. Let's keep this community alive.